All right, Shalom. All praises to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem Rakakwadash. The double honors to the elder apostles, the bishops, and the elders of GMS who rules well. Peace and salutations to the elect. My name is Aina. The title of this video is Nero 47 signs nearly 1 trillion defense bill. Right, and I was watching this video, and then I said to myself, this is Nahum, the third chapter, right? Because in the Nahum, the third chapter, it talks about these devils preparing themselves, to get ready for the siege. Because ultimately, World War III will come, right? And that will be that lake of fire, right? That great fire that the Israelites will need salvation from, right here in America, because America will be destroyed with nuclear warheads. All right. Revelation 11 and 14 says the second woe was past, and behold, the third woe coming quickly. All right. Let me grab this. But the third woe is going to be World War III, right? And pretty much everyone is saying, that they are already in World War III. America hasn't said it yet, but everyone else pretty much is saying it. And even America itself, as you're going to see in this video, is preparing for war, obviously, right? This is Malachi 4 and 1. It says, for behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble. So it's going to be burning, and it's going to turn to stubble. Kind of like you have a fire pit, you get the logs in there. Eventually, they turn down to ash or stubble, right? So that's what's going to happen when the nuclear missiles are shot here on America, right? It says, in the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord Yahweh Bashmi Shai of hosts, right? And it shall leave them neither root nor branch, right? So ultimately, World War III will happen, and it's going to end up with America being burnt up, all right? And America is preparing for that. So when this video got here, like I said, I watched it, and like I said, I immediately said, well, this is Nahum 3. So what I'm going to do is play the video. It's 6 minutes. You can search it up for yourself here and go back over if you want to. But I'm going to play it, speed up, right? And I'm going to play the whole thing, and I'll just read Nahum 3, right? Because this is exactly what they're doing. They're preparing.
Our next story takes us to the United States. Washington has just approved a massive defense budget. It is close to $1 trillion. This is the biggest military budget in American history, or in the world for that matter. It locks in President Donald Trump's priorities, like more money for weapons and the US military at home. But the American Congress has also drawn red lines. There are limits to what the president can do. Plus, Europe is guaranteed the support of US troops. Ukraine will get $800 million in weapons aid. China will face new scrutiny on tech investments. Taiwan will get $1 billion for military cooperation. Israel's missile defense systems will get full funding. And Trump's military operations near Venezuela are under scrutiny. So this is not just a budget. It's a blueprint for US power in the year ahead. Here's a report.
US President Donald Trump has signed a defense law that will shape America's power for the next year. It is the single most important military decision Washington makes annually. This is called the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA. This year, it comes with a record price tag. $901 billion, more than any defense bill before it, and more than what the White House itself requested. Congress passed it with overwhelming support. At home, it focuses on the military itself. US service members will receive a nearly 4% pay rise. The Pentagon will move ahead with new ships, aircraft, and missile systems. Funding for the Trump's Golden Dome missile defense project is also written into law. The bill reflects the political priorities of President Trump. Diversity and inclusion programs at the Pentagon have been shut down, and transgender women are barred from women's sports at military academies. Beyond America's borders, the bill sends even stronger signals. Europe sits at the center of it. Despite Trump's skepticism of NATO, Congress has drawn clear limits. US troop numbers in Europe cannot fall below 76,000. Major equipment cannot be pulled out quickly. Support for NATO's eastern flank is reinforced. Special focus has gone to the Baltic states. Ukraine is also locked in. The Congress has approved $400 million a year for 2 years. The money will fund weapons production through US companies. It guarantees continued military support. Even as political debates continue elsewhere, the next major focus of the bill is on China. Washington is tightening scrutiny of American money flowing into sensitive Chinese technologies. US companies must now notify the Treasury Department when investing in high-risk sectors. These include semiconductors and quantum systems. Federal financing for some Chinese biotech firms is restricted. US diplomats will also expand monitoring of Beijing's global influence. That attention does not stop at China's borders. The bill fully funds the Taiwan Security Cooperation Initiative, worth $1 billion. It authorizes continued US military training for Taiwanese forces. Meanwhile, limits have been placed on reducing US troop levels in South Korea. In West Asia, there's a symbolic break with the past. It repeals the legal authorizations behind the Iraq wars. Those powers had been in place for decades. Congress is reclaiming its role in decisions of war. The law also lifts sanctions imposed on Syria in 2019. The stated aim is to support post-war reconstruction. The bill provides full funding for Israel's missile defense systems. That includes Iron Dome and David's Sling. In America's neighborhood, active duty troops have been authorized at the US-Mexico border. And congressional oversight of recent military operations in the Caribbean has also been tightened. So what does this all add up to? This defense law locks in America's military priorities for the year ahead. Congress has drawn red lines that Trump cannot cross. The message to allies is clear. US commitments will hold. And to rivals, Washington is watching them closer than ever before.
Right. A lot was said there regarding just, different nations, all preparing for war. And ultimately, this bill has been passed, right? And since then, different fallouts have happened, right, between NATO and America, right? A lot of things happened, even Ukraine and America. But ultimately, the Most High Yahweh Bashmi Shah is, gathering the nations together. As you can see, it showed you what Israel and Syria. It showed you it was talking about China and Taiwan. You've seen Mexico and Venezuela. What it didn't show you was Russia and Iran, and that goes into the Middle East. When they showed Israel, they should have showed Iran and Russia too, but they didn't. But nonetheless, we know, right, that those two nations are involved, right? Russia and Iran. Isaiah 13:4 says, "The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts, right, Yahweh Bashmi Shah, mustered the host of the battle." So you can see all these heads and figures of the nations are preparing, for war ultimately. So let me grab this Nahum 3 and hit it on the point, and then I'll most likely just read everything else. But this is what America is doing. This is Nahum 3:14. It says, draw thee waters for the siege. Fortify thy strongholds. Go into clay and tread the mortar. Make strong the brickling. There shall the fire devour thee. The sword shall cut thee off. It shall eat thee up like the cankerworm. Make thyself many as the cankerworm. Make thyself many as the locust. Thou hast multiplied thy merchants above the stars of heaven. The cankerworm spoileth and flieth away. All right. And ultimately, what? This is America, increasing themselves, right? You have this defense bill happening, right? They're trying to crank up their defenses. Even Trump's Iron Dome plan was in there. Israel's Iron Dome plan was in there. They want to push for, more weaponry, right? They're trying to, just tell their allies, or whatever the case may be, to prepare, to get ready. We're going to send this amount of missiles here. We're going to send this amount of troops here. It needs to be there. It needs to stay there. Right. So this is America preparing itself for the siege. It says, thy crown are as the locusts, and thy captains as the great grasshoppers, which camp in the hedges in the cold day. But when the sun arises, they flee away, and their place is not known where they are. Right, and some of the captains of America is what, the NATO and the EU. Right, and there Trump has been telling them that, yo, you're not spending enough money. Right, you're not, preparing for a war. Basically, you need to increase your spending, or we'll, you know, stop supporting you. That's what Trump was saying to NATO. Let me see this in the NLT here. See what AMP says. AMP says, your guardsmen are like the swarming locusts. Your marshals are like the hordes of grasshoppers, settling in the stone walls on a cold day. When the sun rises, they fly away, and no one knows the place where they are. And ultimately, this has been NATO, right? They say NATO EU is not is not like the next superpower, right? They say NATO and EU will be non-relevant. They say that NATO and EU pretty much has relied on America, to be there for them, even though they are guardsmen, right, and marshals. This NATO and EU was set up, right? NATO was set up to combat the USSR, right? But ultimately, once that was done, they just been sitting there, right? And we can see what's playing out in these last days, where they're ultimately gonna flee and turn to Russia, right? They're gonna join Russia. Nahum 3:18 says, "Thy shepherds slumber, O king of Assyria. Thy nobles shall dwell in the dust. Thy people were scattered upon the mountains, and no man gathered them." Right? Let me grab this NLT too, or let me see the AMP. It says, "Your shepherds are asleep, O king of Assyria. Your nobles are lying down in death. Your people are scattered on the mountains, and there is no one to gather them." And ultimately, America is all over the place, right? The shepherds are slumbering. You got your different generals quitting now, different admirals quitting now. It says, "Thy nobles shall dwell in the dust," which is, basically, dying. It says, I was thinking about was Isaiah 47, where it says, they shall be as a chase row. Let me see. And I was just looking at the scripture right there, so I was thinking about. Let me see if I can find that scripture real quick. Okay, it was over here. All right, Isaiah 13 and 13 says, "Therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place, and the wrath of the Lord Yahweh Bashmal shall host in the day of his fierce anger." Right, and that goes into the nuclear missiles. Right, Isaiah 24 tells you that the earth shall roll to and fro as a drunkard. Right, and that's what's going to happen when the nuclear missiles hit. Right, and like I gave you earlier, right, it will go nuclear. Right, and you can see them preparing for that. Verse 14 says, "And it shall be as the chase row, and as the sheep that no man taketh up. They shall every man turn to his own people, and flee every one into his own land." Right, so this is what I was thinking about when I was looking at scripture. Let me get it, and let me see the AMP. It says, "And like the hunted gazelle, or like sheep that no man gathers, each foreign resident will turn and go back to his own people, and each one flee to his own land." So that's a good breakdown right there. It says, NOT, "Everyone in Babylon will run about like hunted gazelle, like sheep without a shepherd. They will try to find their own people and flee to their own land." All right. So going back over here, pretty much showed, that's what I was thinking about when I was reading this right here. That it says that people are scattered upon the mountains and no man gathered them. All right. So Nahum 3:19, it says, there is no healing of thy bruise, thy wound is grievous. All that hear the brew of thee shall clap their hands over thee, for upon whom have not thy wickedness passed continually. And this is what America is trying to do right now in these last days. They realize, even now with this whole Venezuela situation, you have Russia and China in there, right? And basically now America is like, that's why they something. Let me see if I can search the Monroe Doctrine or whatever that they're talking about. Basically, that America owns the whole what is it, Western Hemisphere, right? But now you have China and Russia over there, and they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What happened? We was too busy over here in Afghanistan and shit trying to help Israel accomplish their greater Israel situation. Now Russia and China's in our backyard, right? So they're trying to heal that problem now, right? But they have a short time. Revelations 12:12 says that. They're going about, moving very quickly because they got a short time. Not only are they going to the new world order system, but now you got problems that you wasn't thinking about, you wasn't aware of. All right, so let me see this Monroe Doctrine real quick. This is something you can look up, but I'll read it right here. You see, it should pop up actually. Okay. It says the Monroe Doctrine, right, proclaimed by President James Monroe in 1823, is a U.S. foreign policy that warned European powers against further colonization or interference in the Western Hemisphere. So what Trump is doing is saying that we own all of this. We own Canada, we own America, we own Mexico, we own Venezuela and everything down there. So that's what Trump is implying when he's bringing this thing out right here. It says asserting the Americas were close to new colonies and establishing a distinct sphere of influence for the U.S. It positioned the U.S. as a regional power, preventing European political involvement in the newly independent Latin American nations. All right. It says while the U.S. pledged neutrality in European affairs, becoming a cornerstone of American foreign policy, and justifying later interventions. All right. So that's what now Trump is bringing back to light in recent news. It says Donald Trump's administration has revived the Monroe Doctrine, labeling it the Trump corollary. All right. I don't know what this is talking about. Let's see. Okay. One already proved.
Corollary.
All right, corollary. It says a proposition that follows proposition that follows from and is often appended to one already proved. All right, cool. So basically, they're saying this is Trump's new plan, basically. In his 2025 national security strategy, which was a cry for help. So he labeled this Monroe Doctrine once again, and that's why Nahum 3 says what it says. Right? It says there's no healing of thy bruise. And I did a video on my page called the national security strategy is a cry for help. They want the healing, right? They want that power back, and they're losing it because Esau is the end of the road, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followed. So it says in this 2025 national security strategy, reasserting U.S. dominance in the Western Hemisphere to counter rivals like China. See, combat migration and narco terrorism, secure supply chains, and promote U.S. economic interests. Ultimately, they're trying to heal the wound that's already there. Now they have missiles in Venezuela that's like, I believe, 7 minutes or 17 minutes away from like Miami or something. And then they start talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis. Where I believe they had missiles near, that was a problem, right? I got to do some more, searching up on that, which I'll do at a later time. So yeah, pretty much that's all that is. It was interesting. Like I said, I read it or listened to, and I say, yeah, this Nahum 3, and I got the points that I wanted out of there. Um, Jeremiah 51:9 or 51:8. You can start at 7. Jeremiah 51:7 says, Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, right? The Lord being Yahweh Bashmi Rashad, right? That made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore nations are mad, right? So basically, the nations follow after America, right, in their their doctrine and their ways, right? And pretty much it was all a trap for nations because America doesn't care about none of that shit. None of the different laws and things they put out there, they don't care about it. That's why they're just walking away from different agreements, right, and doing their own thing. And now the nations are upset, right? Different deals and things like that. Even the whole NATO right now, Trump is basically saying, well, thinking about leaving NATO, right, getting up out of there. It says Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her take balm for her pain, if so be she may be healed. It says we will have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go everyone into his own country, for her judgment reacheth unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies. All right. And it goes into the nuclear missiles here again, right? It says, the Lord Yahweh Bashmal shall have brought forth our righteousness, coming at us declaring Zion, the work of the Lord Yahweh Bashmal Shai, our power. And we're declaring what he's going to do, which is destroy America, right? It says, make bright the arrows, gather the shields. The Lord Yahweh Bashmal Shai have raised, and that's what they're doing now, right? So I gave you Nahum 3, but even Russia is doing that because pursuant to Ezekiel 38, the Most High said he would turn back Russia and put hooks into their jaws and bring them forth against basically Israel and America. So even Russia is pumping out more missiles, right? Which they have already started. You see, America's behind, right? Russia's the one now. The Edomites now in the last days that's has that power. We see that America started with it, right? The Edomites in America started with that power, right? Dropping the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? The Edomites in Russia are gonna end it. And that's why you have the prophecy that says in Revelations. Let me just go grab it. I don't know exactly which one of these it is. Let me see. I'm gonna just search it up. All right, 13. Okay. All right, Revelation 13:1. It says, "And I stood upon the center of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy." Right, and ultimately this is America, right? These seven heads and 10 horns represents governments. All right. It says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Right. And ultimately, the dragon was the Roman Empire, right? But the Roman Empire had a wound, right? And that's when you have what is called the Dark Ages or the Byzantine Empire, right? And that's where we ruled. The Israelites ruled in a time. This is history that America tries to hide, right? And then he the deadly wound was healed because after a 1,000 year period, basically he rose back. That's pursuant to Revelations, the 20th chapter, right? The 7th verse. It says Revelation 13:3, and I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. So the wound that was healed was America, right? It says, and they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him, right? So ultimately, America, right, dropped bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Nobody wanted war with America, right? And these were the Edomites that did it. first. But now we have in these last days the weak saying that they are strong. So now all these other nations also now have nuclear missiles, just like America started with the nukes. But now everyone has it, and ultimately, when you get this bear, the feet of a bear, this bear is representation of Russia, right? Russia is their animal is the bear, right? You get their flag, the Russian bear, or whatever the case may be. Let me see if I have any notes on that here, but that's just through the spirit, we figure that out, and we understand that Russia is the end of America, all right? Because Russia will be the one, pursuant to Ezekiel 38, to gather many nations with them to shoot arrows on America, all right? I was at two. Okay. Yeah, so pretty much that's the same, right? And we know that it says in the beast with the soul is like unto leopard. And if you go back to Daniel, I believe it's the second chapter, going into the different nations to rule on planet Earth, right? We know that let me see where. I believe it's seven. Okay, no, we got it. Greeks, right? So, and that's why they call it the Greco-Roman Empire, right? Because civilization basically started, as they say, with the Greeks, right? Alexander the Great, right? Who fought many wars, and the earth was still before him, right? And ultimately that transferred into the Roman Empire, right? Which fell to the Israelites, of course, that deadly wound. Um, so that's why it says it that that's why it says leopard here. So in the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, right? And this bear represents Russia. The feet represents the end of a thing, right? Which is Russia. All right. So ultimately, like I was saying, Russia is going to be the one to drop nuclear missiles in this time, and they are Edomites, right? The scriptures say Esau's the end of the world, and Russia is going to end that thing by destroying America with allies joining onto him, and ultimately, Yahweh Shai is going to return at the same time, and also, like I said earlier, get the light from Israel, from America, right, all around the world, right, but ultimately from America, because America's going to be destroyed, right? So let's go back to, I think that was it. All right. Yeah, so pretty much that's all I had. They can't heal their wound or whatnot. Ultimately, Russia is going to send those nuclear missiles, and Trump is preparing for that by, this $1 million or $1 trillion defense bill, right? Pretty much. So, Lord, when you edify from the lesson, Shalom, to for elect, which consists of men, women, and children, Shalom.